Hey everybody, Manny Telebear here. So we're now on day 58, and what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes is how I got involved in doing joint ventures. A lot of people would call it affiliate marketing, but it really wasn't affiliate marketing because it was pre-digital, and so everything was done manually, and it was all done on a handshake. And I formed a relationship, which we will talk about, and this guy and I just kind of started working together, and I'll kind of walk you through what that looked like. But before I do that, I do want to set it up. So I don't want to go all the way back because the story is already long, but I can tell you that I stumbled into course creation by accident because I wanted to do coaching and consulting, but I didn't know how to go about getting clients yet. I just wasn't it was pre-Facebook and it was almost pre-YouTube really. And so going out and getting clients wasn't an easy thing to do. And I'm legally blind, I don't drive, so I couldn't really go place to place and meet with people. And so I started creating courses, and I started creating courses really, really fast. So I think I created 30 products in less than 6 months. And what I was doing is I was studying marketing every single day. And when I wasn't studying marketing, I was creating something. And at the beginning, I was selling on eBay. And the reason I was selling on eBay is because I was also buying on eBay. And so I was going to eBay, selling on a daily basis. And if something said marketing on it, I basically did all of these searches. So I searched on a daily basis for Dan Kennedy, Frank Kern, and actually this pre-Frank Kern, it was Dan Kennedy, Jay Abraham, Chet Holmes, and some of the older marketers and older copywriters. And I was just constantly buying, and I was studying everything I could get my hands on. And what ultimately happened, if it said marketing on it, I would buy it. And the reason for that is because what I would do is I would buy it, I would consume it, and then I would sell it back off on eBay and get most of my money back. And as a matter of fact, a lot of times I would make money on the stuff. And so I bought a carpet cleaning flyer, and it was marketing for carpet cleaners. Had marketer in the title. I bought it, spent $20, and Dandeline sent me the flyer. And he also had a really, really good money back guarantee. He said, if you're unhappy with this for any reason whatsoever, just reach out and I'll send you a refund. His copy was really good. His risk reversal was really good. And the flyer was really good. The only problem is I had bought like $600 worth of carpet cleaning stuff off of a guy in the UK like 2 months earlier, and I had already seen the flyer. The flyer was in that box of material. And so I reached out to Dan and I just said, hey, I love the flyer. Unfortunately, I bought this from someone 2 months ago. So if you could send me a refund, I would really appreciate it. Now, I did not know who Dan was. I didn't know he'd created the flyer even. I just knew he was selling it. And if he would have sent me an email and told me what happened, I would have said, that's fine, keep your money, not a problem. And I probably never would have talked to him again. But what he did is he sent me a refund. And then he sent me an email that said, hey, Manny, I really, really appreciate you reaching out. I'm really sorry about that. I created this flyer. It's my flyer, and that guy is selling it illegally. He's selling my stuff, and I don't know how to stop him. Well, two things are going on here. First of all, I know a little bit about IP already, and I'm kind of doing a little bit of that. But the other thing is, I felt bad because he'd sent me the money, and I didn't know what back the money, and I didn't know what to do. I thought, I sent him $20. He sent it back to me. I don't want to send him the $20. That would just be weird. And so I sent him an email and said, hey, Dan, I'm a marketer. I'm a marketer and you're a carpet cleaner. I know for a fact I can give you a lot of ideas on how to grow your carpet cleaning business. Why don't you just give me a call? And so Dan called me. And back then, I was a little bit overzealous the way I dealt with people. So what I did is I just gave Dan a marketing beatdown. And I got him on a call and I said, you know, I said, watch your average transaction size. Once someone buys from you, how soon do they buy again? What's the lifetime value of your customer? When someone buys from you, are you giving them options at the point of purchase? Are you giving them a basic, better, and best price? Do you have a whole house cleaning special? Are you offering home detailing for a very large amount of money? And when someone are you following up after the person buys and thanking them and then database marketing them with email, but more important than email, are you sending direct letters to the person? I just basically just, like I said, for 90 minutes, I just gave them a marketing beatdown. And Dan said, Manny, your material is amazing. I have this new forum that I'm working on. I'm building this forum online for carpet cleaners to help them market better. And if you created something for carpet cleaners, I know that we could sell it. And I just happened to talk to Dan right at the time he was starting this carpet cleaner online forum where you could call in and you could ask questions and it was just a bunch of carpet cleaners and he was helping them with marketing. And he had built this thing and he was also selling that flyer to build an email list. And so Dan had said, if you create something, I think we could sell it. Well, I had just created a product called Guerrilla Marketing Customized Training for Small Business Owners. It was 6 DVDs and 6 CDs. What I did was I took that product and I recreated the whole thing and I called it Guerrilla Marketing Customized Training for Carpet Cleaners because I wanted to get it out real fast. And instead of being 6 CDs and six DVDs, I just made the CDs. So we created a 6 CD set and we were going to sell that for $97. That's what we were going to do. And by the way, I'm telling you all, I'm not original. Guerrilla marketing came from J. Conrad Levinson, guerrilla marketing, customized training. I don't know where I got that. Carpet cleaners are keywords. Business owners are keywords. And so what I was doing is I was selling the stuff on eBay and I was doing really well because I would use all of these keywords. As a matter of fact, the second product I created for the carpet cleaners was the simple letter writing system for carpet cleaners. And I got the simple letter writing system from John Carlton. He'd created a product called the simple letter writing system. So what I did is I created the simple letter writing system for carpet cleaners. I created 20 customized letters that carpet cleaners could send to their customers to get these people to buy more. And that's so Dan and I formed this relationship. And Dan had built this group, was building this group, and we decided I was going to be the guest speaker that would teach marketing because he felt I knew way more about marketing than him. And I can tell you, Dan was a really sharp marketer, but he was a better copywriter than me. And he also, I mean, he understood the game. He just really was good at what he was doing. And it just happened that he had already built a list of about 300 people on an email list from selling the flyer. And eventually he had about 3 or 4,000 people on that list. And so what happened, I was the default guest speaker every Tuesday, and I would go in and speak. And then Dan would say, hey guys, by the way, Manny's got a course. If you want to buy the course, reach out to Manny. And at first, I wasn't even splitting the money with him, and I would sell 3 or 4 of these a week. And then what we started doing joint ventures. So what would happen, Dan would write the copy. He would send a letter to his audience of carpet cleaners, an email. He would sell my product and then we would split the money 50-50. And he would really literally do it down to the penny. And so I mean, like I would get 9 payments of $45.74 or something in about 4 minutes every time he would send an email. You know what I mean? I mean, he was rigid about the money, and he was always to the penny, and he always held two or three back in case people asked for their money back. And we started doing really, really well. And the bigger his list got, the more money we made. And we got to where we were splitting about $12,000 a month. So we would sell $12,000 worth of product a month. He would get half and I would get half. Now, my half wasn't as big as his half because number one, we were selling a physical product that had to be mailed. So I had to create the product. So I had to buy the CDs, print the CDs, put the labels on the CDs, put the labels in a CD case, put the case in an envelope that I had to buy, put a sticker on the envelope, and I had to pay for shipping. And so it was costing me out the door. I wish I could. I used like, okay, I'll do it in my head. 20 cents a disc, that's $1.20. The case was 50 cents, that's $1.70. The envelope was 25 cents, that's $1.95. Plus, it was costing about $2.12 to ship up medium mail. So $4.07 or something. I could if I had a little bit more time, I could give you the exact number. And we were doing this a lot. And what's interesting is, any given time he might sell 50 or 100 of these, and then he would send me he would send me emails. And what he would do is he would give me the person's name and address, and he would give me their name and address. And then what I would do is I would print a label with that person's name and address, and right underneath their name and address, I put the 16-digit confirmation number from shipping through PayPal, and I would send that back to him. So now he sent me X amount of names, and I sent him back X amount of names with the confirmation number. And so if someone messaged him and said, "Hey, Dan, I haven't got my product yet," he'd say, "This is the confirmation number. Let me check on it." And he'd say, "Hey, it's in the mail. You'll get it in the next day or so." Or could tell them, we could tell them what state it's in. We'd almost tell them what state and city it's in. And we could almost tell them what day it's going to show up at their door pretty much. And we were doing really well. And Dan and I became very, very good friends. And Dan, like I said, Dan was a very good carpet cleaner, but he was also a really, really good marketer. And I watched him build this thing. And at first it was like 6 people, then 12 people, then 15, then 25, then 36. And eventually Dan would have 300 or 400 people in that thing every Tuesday night. And I was no longer the guest speaker. And the reasons at first he couldn't get anyone to speak. So I was the default guest speaker. But eventually it was a situation where not only did people want to speak, people would pay him to speak. So he was selling banner ads on his website. He was selling advertising to his list and to the group. He was selling my stuff. He was charging people to come into the room and speak. And what you would have is all these equipment manufacturers and chemical manufacturers. They all wanted to sell their stuff to carpet cleaners. And so they would do deals with him. And Dan was doing really, really well. And ultimately, he had built a lifestyle business for himself. And so Dan eventually quit cleaning carpet, and he was doing this full time. And how this would work is we would do a launch, and we would make a lot of money, and then we wouldn't sell anything for a while. And it might be 2 weeks, it might be 4 weeks, it might be 6 weeks. And ultimately, when Dan ran out of money, Dan would hit his list with an offer. And it's not that he didn't like me, but that's just it was a lifestyle business to him. So, and so the problem is my financial situation was like, it was rocky because I never knew when we would mail. And what's interesting is I would literally talk to Dan every day about marketing every day. And I'd say, "Dan, we need to get something in the mail. I need money." He'd say, "Yeah, I'm going to mail something tonight." And he wouldn't mail, but it was just his nature. And so what happened is Dan was working on a deal with another carpet cleaner, and they were going to sell a $1,000 coaching program. And this coaching program was going to include content that this other guy was going to create. And it was going to include equipment and chemicals from a company. And the price was 2,000, but if you just wanted the program, it was 1,000. But if you paid 2,000, you got all this equipment and chemicals. So they were tying it to equipment sales and things like that. And Dan had a lot of people wanting to buy it. So basically, what Dan does is he says, "Hey, we're going to sell this. We're going to start selling it in 3 weeks." And what happened is he he was telling people they were going to launch, but he wasn't what is the word for it? He wasn't giving them all of the details yet because he wasn't ready to launch. And they'd found an equipment manufacturer they were working with. Well, what happened is the equipment, some people, because they were tired of waiting, they started going to the equipment manufacturer and buying the equipment straight off of the people. And Dan wasn't getting a percentage of that money like he was supposed to. So, like, 3 people went to that guy, and then they went to Dan and they said, "Dan, I bought the equipment like you said, and it's really, really good." Well, Dan goes back to these guys and says, "You guys got to give me money for that." And they didn't want to. And so Dan cut ties with that group of people. So now he no longer had an equipment manufacturer. So he had to go out and find another one. So he had to delay the launch for about 2 or 3 months. And then he delayed the launch for 2 or 3 months. And then what happened, he had his carpet cleaning joint venture partner. And by the way, another reason he wasn't doing the marketing with me and he was doing the marketing with this guy, the guy he was doing the marketing with was very, very big in the industry and he basically knew everyone in the space. And he had a very big list. He had a very big list of people who would work with them. And so they had Dan's list and they had Craig's list. And that's the reason he was kind of going with that guy, and it made sense because the person was very big in the space. And so they had another launch date. And I want you to think about this because we're going to talk about this in a minute. So they had a launch date that came and went with no launch. They created another launch date. And what had happened, someone had called Dan and just begged him to said basically, "Let me in. I want to do it now. I'll just give you the money if you'll let me in now, and you can give me the content when it gets released to everyone else." And Dan did that. But what happened? Dan had hired his nephew or someone to oversee all of that and make sure everything worked out, because what happens, you get the money, you have to pay the manufacturer for the equipment so they can ship it. Well, what happened is Dan had another manufacturer online. Someone sent Dan's nephew like $2,000, and Dan called the manufacturer and said, "Hey, we just sold one. Send it out to this person's address, and my nephew's going to send you a payment." Well, what happened is the manufacturer never got the payment, and they're about to launch again. And what happens is Dan gets a hold of this person and says, "Hey, they didn't get their payment. What happened?" He said, "I don't know. I'll have to look it up and I'll get back to you." And it turns out this person had basically taken the money and not turned it over. And so they had to postpone the launch again for a third time, because and ultimately what happened is Dan decides he's just going to do it himself with his partner, and he's going to basically navigate himself until they find someone who can manage the money and all of that. Well, what happens when they decide to do this? They postpone the launch 3 times. Now, I can tell you, I was working with them on the launch. I was working with them on the email sequence, and Dan would write the email sequence and he would send it over, and then I would make changes and I would correct things and I would send it back, and then he would rewrite it and send it back, and I'd say, "No, we need that part that was in there." And we did this for a long time because he kept delaying the launch. So when he finally launched the product, when he finally hit his list with the offer, they did $120,000 in 10 days. No, they made $120,000 in 10 days. So that's on their end of it. So some people bought the equipment, some people did not buy the equipment, but on the course sales and the coaching sales alone, 120,000 in 10 days. Plus, a lot of people bought the cleaning, carpet cleaning equipment and the chemicals, and they got two things from that. They were going to continue to sell these people chemicals, but they also got to override on the equipment as well. The problem here is that Dan, and by the way, so just where we're at here, Dan would make a lot of money and then he'd spend it all and he wouldn't have any. We would do a launch. He would make a lot of money and spend it all. He wouldn't have any money. We would do a launch. Well, Dan was living in a trailer and his stepdad died. And his stepdad owned the trailer. And Dan wasn't getting the trailer because his stepdad had daughters, and the trailer was going to go to the stepdad's family. So Dan had to move. The only reason Dan finally launched this thing, because he kept pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, is because he was in a corner. He had to move. All of his stuff was in boxes packed. He did not know where he was going. Well, they do 120,000 in 10 days. Dan moved to from Iowa to Missouri, or from Missouri, Iowa to Missouri, or Missouri to Iowa. He bought like 13 acres out in the middle of nowhere, double wide trailer, paid cash for everything. And Dan no longer needed to do a joint venture with me because he made all of this money and they had money consistently coming in. So Dan and I never did another deal together, and he never mailed for me again. Now they did hire me. They did give me some money for some consulting. I went and hung out with them, and they were really good to me, but ultimately we didn't ever end up doing another deal together. Um, but this is the thing though, 120,000 in 10 days. And I thought these guys were off to the races. And I'd helped them write the email sequence, and I was ready to take these people to $1 million, but they couldn't get out of their own way. I think they ended up doing $240,000 on that product, but they kept changing it and adding more stuff and adding more stuff. And they brought another product out and they did the same thing with that, changing it and adding more stuff. And they ultimately just they couldn't get out of their own way. They made a lot of money, there's no question. But what's interesting is I felt they had a $2 or $3 million opportunity, and he just couldn't leave it alone. And if they would have listened to me, I know I would have scaled them well past $1 million. I mean, I just know I would have. Now, I'm going to walk you through some things here. I think it's important you understand how all this happened. Why did they make so much money so fast? The reason they made so much money so fast is because they built up all this demand because they kept stopping the launch. They would say they're going to launch and then they wouldn't. And then they would say they're going to launch and then they wouldn't. And then they would say they're going to launch and they wouldn't. And so the minute people got a link to buy, they bought because they were concerned they were going to kill it again. And that's the reason that they made so much money so fast. And like I said, I think they could have taken it to $1 million. And I can tell you, Kim Luna did the exact same thing. She made $110,000 selling a bunch of webinars she packaged together. And when she made the 110 grand, she decided to create a real course, BTBY, Be True Brand You. And she kept postponing the launch because she kept adding and adding and adding to it. And when she finally released it, I think she made $850,000 in 3 or 4 weeks. And so there are a lot of takeaways there, pent up demand and things like that. And Kimra, the same way. Kimra could have probably made $10 million, but she kept messing with the product, adding to the product. And then she would do all these delays because she would get in the middle of, BTBY 2.0, and it would take longer for her to finish it than she wanted. And she kept pushing things back. But there's some value in pushing things back. But like I said, if you're wanting to scale something, you got to create it and quit messing with it. And I think these guys could have done, like I said, millions and millions of dollars if they would have just created something and quit messing with it. But I'm going to end out. And again, I know this one was longer and I told y'all it was going to be, but what I will do is we will see you all in the next video. And thanks a lot.